Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the weekly MMA Cycles Market Update. This is Gianni DePocha, your host. It's great to be back with you on this Friday afternoon. Another crazy week in markets. There's been no shortage of that lately as we head into the midterm election week. But this past week, we had another Federal Reserve rate hike, 75 basis points. Markets initially liked the news, especially stocks, but as soon as Fed Chair Powell started speaking, the good news quickly evaporated and stocks plunged lower. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we can look at what happened from a graphic standpoint. So yeah, we made a new cycle high looking at a chart of the Dow Jones on November 2nd, but then we sold off promptly. And then here on Friday, we have a little bit of a bid coming in. We're off the highs of the day, but there's a lot of indecision right now. Fed Chair Powell said that the Fed has no plans to basically put the brakes on any rate hikes in the immediate future. But keep in mind, the Federal Reserve also stated several months ago that inflation was just transitory. So we really can't take what they say at face value, especially considering those words were said within the orb of a Venus Uranus opposition aspect, which is on the 5th of November. So any surprises, there are definitely some surprises in the works with respect to monetary policy, which is ruled by Venus, and Uranus, obviously no shortage of surprises. So the big news going into next week, obviously, is the U.S. midterm elections. Will we see the House and Senate change hands, or will we see a split chamber? That remains to be seen. But we know from recent years that elections tend to correspond to high levels of volatility. Look at the difference in performance between the NASDAQ and the Dow. The Dow's still over 10% above its low from mid-October, but the NASDAQ is just 2% above it. So that performance differential definitely can be attributed to Saturn still experiencing its transit through the sign of Aquarius. The depression in tech and growth stocks continue. But as we look forward into next week, there are no shortage of geocosmic signatures that could either propel the market higher or lower in one direction or the other. So starting off with the square aspect between Venus and Saturn on the 7th of November, that is a very important a signature when it comes to markets, because Saturn rules our perception of reality, Venus rules money and stocks. But the big news, or the big transit that many astrologers, financial astrologers and non-financial astrologers, what they've been talking about is the lunar eclipse on election day. The same day we'll have a Kanzimi conjunction between the sun and Mercury. Mercury will also be in opposition to Uranus on the 8th of November as well. But as Uranus is making that opposition to the sun and Mercury, we also have a T-square with Saturn at that time. So Uranus is kind of a revolutionary planet. Saturn rules governments and control. We'd have the potential for a consensus shattering or rattling outcome of the election. But with Uranus, you never really know how that's going to unfold. We know that from the past election cycles, polls can either be pretty accurate or widely off. So, we really can't rely on that all that much. But as we look at the astrology in the next week, we know that there should be no shortage of surprises. The other main aspect that I want to highlight for next week, and as we can actually pull up a chart of crude oil or the ETF USO, because I think it's pertinent for it, is the trine aspect between Venus and Neptune on the 10th of November. That would seem to be a pretty good signature for the oil markets, but that's not how we use geocosmic signatures. They're more reversal focused. But Venus trine Neptune could be some good news on the energy front, perhaps. News of more oil to be pumped, or maybe demand starting to pull back a little bit, so prices come down. That remains to be seen. But oil's capping off a good week here in the markets. Energy stocks within the equity markets continue to be the strongest across the board. So that is no surprise given Jupiter's retrograde back into Pisces that began last week. Jupiter in Pisces was very bullish for energy and crude oil earlier this year. Let's go ahead and take a look at the US dollar. This is only reflective as of Thursday's close, but we're selling off pretty hard here on Friday in the US dollar, which could actually portend positive omens for other parts of the market like stocks and commodities. We had payroll numbers come in above expectations here on Friday, and that's actually I think, a pretty good sign for the economy overall, but it also does give the Fed a little bit more impetus to keep raising rates per the economic principle known as the Taylor rule. So dollar coming down a little bit from its high. This could be a reversal associated with Venus in opposition to Uranus. Next, I want to look at interest rates because they are also consolidating near the highs here, so really not much to update on that front. I want to take a look at gold miners GDX. We covered this in the MMA monthly ETF report. Really strong day here on Friday, up over 9%. But I think the big news on the precious metal front is silver up almost 7% on the day. So seeing big moves in that market. That shouldn't be ignored. Last and certainly not least, I want to talk about what's happening in the crypto space. Bitcoin up 4% here on Friday. Venus obviously approaching its opposition to Uranus, but with all those Uranus aspects next week too, we could expect some big moves in the crypto space. But I think the relative strength being displayed by Ethereum, which is up 7% on the day here on Friday, is more notable as a matter of fact. So if you're interested or a trader of cryptocurrencies, would encourage you to check out our MMA cryptocurrency reports. We publish those both on a weekly and a daily basis. We also cover it in the ETF report, but it's the BITO Bitcoin ETF. So that takes care of what I wanted to review with you all this week. The forecast sale is over, but we are still selling the book as I start my own analysis of the markets next year. I'm really excited to share what my research is indicating. I know I discussed with Ray yesterday some of the aspects that we are looking at, as well as various cycle culminations that could unfold in 2023. There should be no shortage of fireworks next year, as we have 3 outer planets set to change signs. Jupiter will be going into Taurus, Saturn into Pisces, and Pluto will make its initial ingress into the sign of Aquarius. So definitely recommend that you check out our forecast book, www.mmacycles.com. This is also the weekend, I should say on next week, we will be publishing our MMA Monthly Cycles Report. So check that out as well. That is our flagship report. So if you want to know what we're seeing in the stocks, bonds, and commodity markets and precious metals, that is the place to find it. So again, www.mmacycles.com. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next week. Have a great weekend.